This video offers a few tips to help you get an A on your formal essay. First, read the instructions carefully. The instructions tell you what is required in the essay. This essay requires 4 types of sources. A single source may count for more than one category. For your archival source, you might find a rough draft of a poem you are discussing, or a letter mentioning a poem, or the circumstances behind it. The best sources are probably the First World War Digital Archive, hosted by Oxford University, or the Imperial War Museum in London. But there are other archives with digital sources you can access, such as the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas, which holds most of Wilfred Owen's papers, or the Smithsonian Institution. Think about what you need for your argument. If you are explicating a poem, it could be very useful to have a draft through which you can trace the poet's decision to use a particular word or image. The secondary source must be a piece of literary criticism. That is, this source will talk about the piece of literature you are trying to analyze, offering its own reading. These sources must be peer-reviewed academic essays, which you will find most easily through TTU library search resources. Do not use ChatGPT or similar as a search engine. They are worse than unreliable. They make up sources. If you use Google Scholar, make sure you put -AI at the end of your prompt to help ensure that you get actual articles. Look carefully at the result that is returned by any search engine that you use. If the URL for the article is a suspect location, such as .ru, do not click on the link. You may load malware onto your computer. Again, the safest route is through our library search engines located at lib.ttu.edu. The other secondary source must be a critic or historian helping you to make sense of your general topic. If you were writing about shell shock, for instance, you may want to look up an article that gives statistics on the rate of shell shock during the First World War. This article can be literary criticism, but doesn't have to be. The literary source, as specified in the instructions, must be something we have read together, but not a letter, an essay, a report, or a scholarly article. Your argument will be an interpretation of this literary source. If your archival source is a poster or song, it should connect to the piece of literature you are trying to explicate, and the argument itself should be focused on the literary source. It is okay to use things for any of these sources that we have read together in class. Think carefully about the kinds of arguments you can make based on a literary source and doing literary interpretation. You can't say that contemporary methods of treating PTSD are better than those of World War I, because the piece of literature can't speak to that. You can't say that a poet or other author is really messed up based solely on a piece of literature, because a piece of literature is a crafted artifact that may have as its goal creating a persona that is really messed up. If you are in any doubt as to whether your argument will fly, given the sources you have assembled, please come talk to me so I can help you write your best essay. Passive voice is always banned in my classes. Passive voice is the voice in which actions happen to the subject, rather than the subject doing something. So a sentence like, "I read a book," is a sentence in the active voice, but a sentence like, "A book was read," is in the passive voice. Some fields, mostly sciences, prefer passive voice, but English studies strongly prefer active voice. When writers use passive voice, it can be difficult for readers to figure out who's responsible for the effects the writer is trying to describe. Passive voice makes precision difficult, and we certainly want to be precise in our writing. Remember that your essay has a reader. Your reader does not necessarily agree with everything you think, but your reader can be persuaded. Make sure you explain your thinking to your reader. Don't just wave vaguely at a quotation and say, "Obviously this supports my point." Instead, show your reader how that quotation supports your point. In short essays, it's vitally important to cut to the chase. You don't have room to start at the beginning of time or to explain to readers that the Great War was a really big and important war. Instead, think, why am I writing? What is the import of my argument? Then start with that. I am providing a document on argumentation that uses the scheme of philosopher Stephen Toulmin. Look over it and make sure you understand the elements of argument. I will use these terms in talking to you about your work. I can tell you that the thing most often omitted from student writing is warrant. I am also providing some documents with general tips for writing, which you may want to look at for general help with your essay and presentation.